When listening to the Vintage Messiah radio show, be sure to sit in a comfortable position and remember to be away from the television in a well lit room. The Vintage Messiah radio show is brought to you by Anchor from Spotify and Star Savers Broadcast Productions. All rights reserved. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I know it's been a while since the last episode, and it's good to be back. But before I get into why I left, I want to get into why I came back. I've been making content heavily these last few months, with little to no break, and had very little time for my personal projects. The last project I worked on heavily was an album titled I Love the World La Viva on Spotify, and I only got to do 2 music videos. I made a lot of albums this year and worked on tons of other kinds of content, but I just wasn't into podcasting. I had started a show and built up an audience of wonderful fans waiting for the next episode of TVMRS, but I just didn't have the strength to do it after being spent for my other projects, some that I had to put down for a couple of months. I loved this show and treated it with just as much care as my other projects, but I wanted to wait until I had the time to work on it so that I could put it out in the best quality possible. After closing up shop in the studio for making beats the night before, I took all my equipment back, watched a YouTube video, maybe ate some food, and went to sleep. The next day, I woke up, opened FL Studio, and now have reached my 100th instrumental. I made 100 different sounds with nothing but my Akai Mini and my laptop, and I wanted to do a podcast episode to celebrate, so I figured, what better way to celebrate than to tell my story, uncensored and uncut. I hope you all enjoy this special episode of the Vintage Messiah radio show. Surfing through the internet, Sosspak watching cartoons. Yeah, they give TVMRS. Now they seeing how we move it. You know, seeing other planets, making music, speakers booming. Got no time for marionettes. I stay bagging by my loan. Yeah. Time to take a trip to outer space. Time to take a trip back to cartoon land. Time to take a trip. Yeah, we coming back. Time to take a trip. Just chill, relax. Time to take a trip on the road again. The Vintage Messiah radio show. Today's episode of the Vintage Messiah radio show is brought to you in part by the Sosspak shop and the Yo Vintage website. On my website, you can find all my links, such as my Twitter, Instagram, Coffee, Bandcamp, SoundCloud, YouTube, and more. Be sure to visit us at www.sites.google.com/view/Vintage Messiah/home. For all your digital media needs and services, as well as in-person services, be sure to visit my social media on Instagram at Vintage Messiah H and Twitter on Vintage Messiah, where my work is regularly posted, as well as ways to contact the team. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now, back to the show. Did you know? On top of creating cartoons, animations, and films for the podcast, Vintage Messiah is also a music artist. Including the track you're listening to right now, Vintage Messiah composes songs, sings and songwrites, and also creates trap beats. To listen to some of his music, be sure to check out Vintage Messiah on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube Music, or ACHVR Official on YouTube. To find more of my links, be sure to visit the episode description. Well, it's time to finally tell this story. It's crazy because sometimes when people ask me, they be like, bro, what got you into this stuff? What made you want to do this? How you started? Well, here's how it go. Around my younger years, I was into hip-hop, R&B, reggae, Latino, J-pop, country, and jazz. From listening to the radio, TV, video games, and my MP3 player. When I lived at my aunt's house and went to elementary school, I owned a Yamaha electric piano. I went to South Shore High School on weekends for piano lessons every week to learn how to play different songs and make my own. I wasn't musically inclined or inclined with any hobbies until I was 15. My brother had a Bluetooth mic with reverb and aux and a speaker out of nowhere, and we had our old laptop laying around, or maybe it was a phone. not sure though. I think he had like 1,000 followers on Instagram or something, and he decided he wanted to make a song. With that mic, we made 3 songs. One was dropped, one was scrapped, and one was lost and we couldn't get the file back. We took turns being the engineer, but it was mostly him doing the work. This was in 2015-2016. The song did pretty well on SoundCloud, and it low-key made me want to do my own music. But I didn't consider that idea until late 2017. When I was in middle school, I used to do a lot of poetry. I would wake up, walk to school, go to the deli if I had the cash, and write whatever was on my mind. I don't have those notebooks anymore, but it gave me a good writing sense I would later end up using as a recording artist. When I first started, all of my roommates were laughing at me, and the counselors where I stayed motivated me and gave me tips, but were also laughing at me in the background. To be honest, the whole thing started when I was making cartoons for Twitter, and I wanted to do a soundtrack for an animated cartoon I was working on. I decided I needed to do vocals, but I nowhere near had any of the equipment I needed to make the song. With the little tools that I had, I made a few songs. My first 10 songs and my first 2 albums were trash. The very beginning of my account was very different to what it looks like now. I mean, yeah, I had some good songs in the old pile, but most of them were just awful, but people were cheering me on anyway. Throughout the end of 2017 and out all of 2018, I was just writing and recording and leveling up my equipment. But I was doing all of this in 11th grade. I went from making cartoons and comics to full-on music artist, but I wasn't fully equipped for it. Most people knew me in high school for doing music and doing art, and I was cool with the popular kids and other kinds of high school kids that were there. Some for music, others for art, and the rest for regular stuff. A few trolls, but everything was cool. In summer 2018, after making some music friends and getting better, I released a tape called 18 Friends, 100 Enemies, or the 1800 tape. It was a 13-track album released on SoundCloud and on sale for $3.50 on CD Baby. Most of my friends and people walking by were jamming to it. It seemed to be my first hit in my career, and I got a lot of friends for it. I didn't get paid for it, but it was a step in the right direction. I did a couple more EPs and singles, and I kept meeting more and more people. But before I get too far ahead, there's something I need to mention. In early 2018, this was also around the same time that a podcast program was starting where people can gather to record episodes, play games, interview people, and travel places. I met the guy that started the thing a while before, and I helped him pitch it with my anecdotal to get it funded for the first season. Things were turning up for me in music as an artist and as an engineer, and I was excited for where things went. From 2019 to late 2021, things tell themselves. In 2019, I graduated high school and released the Turbo Files. I was skipping class to make music, but I had to catch up for my grades, so I didn't have as much time, but I wasn't making music as frequently as I do now. I met a music producer who gave me pointers on how to improve. The podcast became a job for me. I met a couple of people who were into making songs and made a few singles with each of them. I worked with all different kinds of people to make different kinds of projects, other than albums, like instrumental tapes, films, podcast drawings, cartoons, and posters. And I have a lot more to make in the future. I became so happy when people started liking and even paying for my work because they enjoy it so much. After learning how to record my own music, to making music videos, to making cartoons for them, to doing all kinds of other things, I finally revisited my love for piano after my Yamaha was destroyed by Hurricane Sandy a long time ago. And over the last few weeks, I've made 100 beats and a few other instrumentals, and now consider myself a music producer, which was one of my dreams and goals for this year. I am finally glad that I was able to accomplish this goal, and now I can start doing much bigger projects. With the support from my friends and followers, I have been able to make a milestone in my life, and I've never been more proud of myself. And this was all thanks to you guys, and now I can do so much more. This was the story of the Sosspak Kid. The Vintage Messiah Radio Show. Well, guys, that's the end of the episode. I gotta say, this is probably the longest episode I've done for the Vintage Messiah Radio Show. I'm not gonna check the counter now, but you tell me how long the episode is in the comments. I'm sure it's ridiculously long. But I had a fun time the story. It's good to be back, and I always do the outro live, so they're unwritten, and you get to hear my fresh, honest opinion. And my fresh, honest opinion is, I can't wait to do more episodes. That's a fact, not an opinion. Anyway, I hope to see you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a